It's been a great 2 days so far, and we'll wrap it up with one more of our presentations. And right after Phil's done, we'll again announce the winners of the event survey. So hopefully you've done that. We have 10 $20 gift cards that we'll be announcing that right after he's done. So let's get our final presentation. It's been a great 2 days, and I'm sure this will do outstanding as well. So to give our final presentation, I'm going to ask Tom Rodriguez to come up. Tom is Assistant Professor of Computer Science. Tom?
Welcome. There, get it for short people. All right. They always tend to save the best for last, so here we are. We're going to welcome for the Maastricht Institute of Entrepreneurship's final speaker. We'll have the privilege of welcoming back Phil Kassel, class of 2000. He has a foundation in competition in corporate leadership. As a former scholar wrestler here at Valley, Phil carried his competitive drive duties directly into the corporate world. He ultimately rose to the success in executive leadership within a multi-billion-dollar company and earning one of his top leadership spots and honors twice. He currently serves as the president of Prinsco, a national manufacturing company. And then there was a shift, mission-driven leadership. Despite immense professional success, Phil recognized that achievement alone could not fulfill the deeper question of identity and purpose. Raised in the church, his faith became truly transformational later in life, entirely reshaping his path. Answering call to a mission-driven leadership, he stepped away from his corporate advancement to pursue a life centered on faith, growth, and service. And building on resilient identities through his experience of success, struggle, and refinement, he developed a core belief: grit alone is not enough. True endurance is sustained by grace. As a business leader, speaker, author, and co-founder of 365 Grit, he now focuses on helping leaders, athletes, and team build resilient identities and disciplined endurance. He shares practical frameworks to help individuals and team build resilience through a rhythm of reflect, reset, refocus, and re-engage. His central message emphasizes that identity is received before it is achieved, and that lasting strength comes through surrender. All right, and investing in others alongside his executive responsibilities, Phil is continually invest in others as a guest speaker, mentor, and coach. And above all, he and his wife Amanda are raising 4 children, and he firmly believes that their most important leadership begins at home. Please join me in welcoming Phil Kassel.
Well, that was the talk. You have any questions? Yeah, that was. I appreciate that introduction very much. Yeah, my name is Phil Kassel. Graduated in 2000. It's really great to be here. I'm just going to quickly introduce my home team, my most important team. It's my wife, Amanda, it'll be 20 years this May. So that's crazy. That's wild. I can't believe she stayed with me that long. I've got 4 amazing kids. 2 of them are here. Thank you so much for allowing them to be here. And they've got pages of notes from you speakers. And so thank you. Thank you for partnering alongside me, I'd say that, right? And just forming, and I'd say discipleship and the formation of my own kids as well. I've got 2 others. I've got so my 2 here is a 17-year-old junior in high school and a almost 15-year-old freshman in high school. I've got a little girl who is 10 and another son who is 9. And so what you'll come to realize in your life, if some of you all don't know that already, but what this is really saying is that good luck to the guy that tries to date my daughter. Right? You got 3 brothers that are also just very decorated wrestlers, and so once they get past all of them, if I'm going to be meeting them, they're probably asking for a hand in marriage because they've gone through quite a wall of protectors. And this is just a little bit about just some of the things that are important to me. Right? I love my family deeply, and so thank you for allowing me to introduce them, because that's important, and it's important for who I am a lot of today. So, but I'm going to shift here for a minute. 25 years ago, when I was here on this campus, I was a scholarship athlete. But 25 years ago, my sophomore year, I quit. And that really, didn't expect that one already. I was going to start crying up here. But that one stings. It stings a lot. It stings a lot for me because I had so much more to give. And I remember sitting across the table of Dr. Prinsco, who was the assistant wrestling coach at the time, and sharing that. And I can't remember. I gave all kinds of excuses, I think. But it is something that I still feel to this moment right now. I still feel it. It's very surreal. It's actually really shaped this talk and really the trajectory of my life since then. I didn't realize it at that moment, but it did. It's not because of the sport. I actually deeply love wrestling. It's so ingrained in who I am. I've been coaching it for 25 years on the side. Been coached national teams. I've coached my boys. I still get on the mat. I love it. I deeply love everything about that sport. So I look forward to sharing a little bit more about why I did that. But I walked away from something in me. It wasn't the sport itself. And the thing that I really realize that stings today is that I buried my talent. I had so much more to give. I was decorated. I had D1 offers. I came here because a friend of mine went here before, and I was already getting recruited. I wanted to stay somewhat local at home, but I had a lot. I had a lot more to give, a lot more to give to my teammates. I love about the saying here at Valley in the wrestling room is it's no weak links. My boys and I got to go down the mat yesterday, and they got to go through a practice, and Coach Vest is a teammate of mine. I told him the last time I saw him, I had a tooth stuck through my chin trying to sprawl on one of his shots. Maybe I should try to wrestle him again. But it wasn't about ability is my point. It was not about ability. I had the skill, I had the talent, and I didn't lose. I never gave my chance an opportunity to, and that's worse. And as I set this up, I want you to think about that. Today I have an opportunity to serve as president of a company called Prinsco. I'll get maybe a little bit more into that. But it's a national manufacturing company. We have about 700 employees. We'll be about $500 million in probably the next few years. It's an incredible family-owned, fourth-generational company. I started my career out of college here. I started at the Conagra Foods manufacturing plant right after I graduated by way of American Humanities. Can you believe that the trajectory of my career is fascinating? People ask me, how'd you get to what you're doing? And I'm like, you might want to sit down because it's a pretty unconditional path. Don't lose sight of that. It's not necessarily the path that you think it may be. And so I took a job there. So I've worked in this time frame. I've worked for publicly traded, multi-billion-dollar companies. Then I worked for another multi-billion-dollar privately held company. So this was Conagra Foods. Then I joined a company called Purdue Farms. And then with Purdue, I did this wild thing where I just sold everything. I mean, I'm not even kidding you. I sold it all and went into vocational ministry for several years. Felt a call. I'll get into that in a bit. And then I felt like ultimately that my mission, my calling, my purpose is to be back into executive leadership. I started out to be a teacher and a coach. That's what I started out to do. I'm going to come full circle on that in a few. So that's a little bit about me. But one of the things that is every single one of you in this room, every single one of you in business and leadership in life, you will face, you have faced, or you will face moments like mine 25 years ago in here, where I quit, where the pressure gets high, maybe the stakes are high, maybe the outcome isn't guaranteed, right? And something in you wants to step back, right? You want to step back instead of stepping in. And where I lead today, part of the way we're shaping a culture is we encourage, and my CEO and I have made a commitment that we're going to lean into the difficult things. We're actually going to lean into it. You've heard that already through these talks. Leaning into it, right? Because that's where growth happens. And so I felt that same pressure since then, not just on the wrestling mat, but since that time over the last 25 years, even in the boardroom, right? Where the pressure is not so much how am I going to execute, but maybe the question becomes, am I actually enough to be here? Am I good enough to be here? Do I belong here? Do I belong in that room? Do I belong in that team? Do I belong amongst these people? And so today, this is what I want to do. I want to give you really two things that are going to thread through this talk. Okay, the first one is I want to give you a way to separate who you are from how you perform. For me, I'm an achiever. Take the Strength Finders test, if you're familiar with that. Like, achieving is something I love it. I love to execute. I love to achieve. I'm very driven. I get that all the time, and I am. Sometimes I don't think I am. I think I've backed off a little bit, not my hunger, but just my approach at times, because I've learned over the years I can kind of steamroll right over people. And so it wasn't part of my talk, but I will say this. As you are leaders, your responsibility as a leader is to set the pace of the organization without outpacing the organization. Right? So just why it came to my mind, I just want to say that now. So just that's a bullet that I've learned the hard way many, many times. The second thing I want to leave you with is a practical way to build grit and also tell you why you should care. Because you should care deeply. Because it's really good news, actually. And we're going to go there. I want to back up for just a second. I want to tell you it's a real honor to be here. This 18th annual Maastricht Institute. To be amongst these speakers has been pretty incredible. You are blessed. Like, really, you are blessed with the wisdom that has been shared. There are some themes that have come across it. And I love this about entrepreneurship. Actually, I'm going to share these themes right now because I think it's really good. I wrote some of these down. You hopefully took notes. You better have, because I've got a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old who have got pages of notes soaking up this wisdom here. And there's been a lot there. Gina talked about mindset, spirit of curiosity. You will not be successful if you're not grounded. Hardest thing that happens to you will shape you. It'll make you stronger. These are just some of the key things that were just great insights to take. Israel yesterday talked about relationships and the importance of constraint-free thinking. That is such a powerful piece. I lead teams all the time. Adults, people making big-time salaries. And many times the biggest thing that keeps a team from being successful is right between the ears. It's that constrained thinking. You want to be a constraint-free thinker. Here's a key question that you should write down. My team adopts this all the time. I love it. They start talking about in meetings, what would have to be true? That will change your paradigm quickly. Just write that question down. You want to think in the possibility. We all have biases. We all have experiences. Just ask yourself the question first. What would have to be true? That is a constrained-free thinking. I love that. I appreciate Israel bringing that yesterday. Jared yesterday. Man, I love that phrase. No hack for discipline. Man, it's good stuff there, man. And fall in love with the problem, not this more than the solution. That was fantastic, right? My boys resonated with that one very well. And then also you got a framework yesterday, right? The acronym PEEPS. I agree. We should probably get a different acronym for that, but it's fantastic. People is your number one asset. You're going to hear some common themes here. If your people are your number one asset and everything you do really shows that, you will have highly engaged people. Highly engaged people will be more efficient because they're highly engaged. Psychology calls that flow state. When they're in that space there, you will have profit. When that profit happens because of people number one asset, because they are now engaged, that will become sustainable. The whole key in business models is to create repeatability, sustainability, and scalability, right? So after that, it's a perfect segue for Simon and Sean. AI. AI is a tool that you need to embrace, you need to lean in, you need to keep that spirit of curiosity because it's not going away. It's actually moving at a pace that's somewhat scary, right? And you got a warning call that this generation, you as next generational leaders, need to lean into it. You need to embrace it. It is about speed of execution. The first book I was given as a leader was the book of execution. The first book I was given was called Who Moved My Cheese? Have you ever read that book? Oh, it's the tackiest thing in the world. And then I was like, yeah, I've seen this for the last 25 years. People resistant to change, finding new ways. Israel talked about that again. Second book I was given was the book of execution, right? The discipline of execution. Basically, here's it. I'm going to save you the hard reading in that book. The simple thing is this. The major difference between a company and its competitor is the ability to execute. Simple as that. Okay? So it was great. Darcy, thank you. Thank you. There's so many things I wrote down there as well on that journey, your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing that. Darcy and I were classmates. I'm just a little older. I was 1 year ahead of her. But definitely classmates. It was very awesome just to be here and to share this with you. Man, personal accountability. Used to have a CFO. I loved him. One of my best executive leaders I got to serve with. Reminded me of something similar. It recalled to mind when Darcy said that. Clarity is the role of the leader. That is the role of the leader, clarity. Personal accountability. Priorities. Speed bumps. Kind of took offense to the men thing, but it is true. We all have speed bumps, right? And it's and the encouragement, you're going to have to move forward because we all have them. Discipline, consistent. Don't be soft. That is good. Listen, that is not different. Servant leadership is the way forward. Servant leadership is not soft, right? Clarity is the role of the leader. So if I really care about somebody, then to be clear is to be kind, right? I'm going to have the direct but respectful conversations with that individual. And then just that spirit of curiosity in that we're always learning. So with that said, let me get you my journey. In entrepreneurship, in business, organizations, and teams, they are shaped by environment, right? The rules, this was just shared in the last talk as well. The rules, the norms, the systems, the processes, access to capital, that's pretty important, especially if you're in a startup company or you're in a growth company or you need to have a turnaround. I've been in all of those situations. You need that. I believe deeply in that. I believe deeply in these things that have been shared. They are vital to an organization and to a culture, in systems, processes, operating rhythms. This is what I've spent my career doing. I've created organizational excellence models from the shop floor to the boardroom, in publicly traded, in privately held, in startup, and high turnarounds. In this season of my life, in this journey, I've been in every single one of those kind of life cycles, if you will, of an organization. I believe deeply in it. But there's a second environment. I love the way these talks have shaped my faith system. I'm like, you can't make this stuff up. I call them Godcidences. And I think you're in the midst of one right now. I hope you've been paying attention. If I could challenge you, I hope you have, right? Some of the questions that have been asked by some of you guys have been great, right? Lean into those, ask questions, pick the brains of these people who have been sharing. Spend time, learn, eat the fish and leave the bones, as they used to, I was told a long time ago. It's really, really important. And I think this fits really, really well for this last talk. Again, I can't make this stuff up. What I also think is really interesting is I don't think anybody really knew what we were going to talk about. True? Nobody knew. It's just kind of see how this goes. I think that's the coolest thing in the world. I think it's so cool. And if you were catching the thread, and I just helped set that up with some of these takeaways, I think you're going to see that. There's a second environment, that one environment we just talked about, rules, norms, behaviors, the behaviors that you accept and tolerate, right? The things that you praise or the things that you just let happen, right? Or the things that you punish, right? All these things shape that external environment. The processes, the systems, the frameworks, all of these are important. I want to make sure I say that so that it doesn't come across as if I'm saying something different. I'm saying 100%. If you don't have those, you will not have speed of execution and you will suffer. Your organization will suffer and you will not bring to the table what you're called to bring. Okay, but there is a second environment that I actually think that I'm shaping a talk that's so surreal for me because I wish this is what was being said to me then. That second environment is your internal environment. This is where your identity lies, where your values lie. This is where your fears are, your mindset, your biases. All of these things are the internal environment, right? Culture. Culture is the soul of the organization. Means that it's made up of the souls of the organization. It means it's made up of each of you. You are the organizational culture. You represent that. How you show up attributes to that. So all these external environments around systems and norms and behaviors and values, how you show up or not show up impacts that culture. And so you want to talk about ROI and engagement and productivity and profitability, sustainability. All these things are vital for a business. If that internal environment isn't settled, then it does not get optimized. Even if you have some success. I'm in an organization now that's fantastic. It's incredible. I'm so blessed to be a part of the organization I get to serve in. A fourth generation family-owned business, been around for 51 years in the portfolio that I serve as the president of. It's part of a Dunnick family's business. That is 100 years old. We have multiple portfolios, enterprise portfolios. The company that I serve as a president of, we make up over 50% of all of it, so it's the largest of them. But we have a construction and materials division. We have a golf course division. Now, that's pretty cool. We build golf courses across the country, right? We have a real estate arm. All these are vitally important, right? They're vitally important to the whole economic system of this. That shapes our culture, how these individuals and how we all show up, what we tolerate, what we don't. And they say, Peter Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's 100% true. Your culture does. Again, culture is vitally important. The soul of the organization. And you bring that there. But I would say this, the most sophisticated strategy in the world, it won't matter if your identity isn't strong enough to hold you in the game. You can have the best strategy. I've been in the room with some of the best leadership minds. You have the best strategy. But if that cultural, the values, the behaviors, the norms of it doesn't match, that doesn't get optimized. Does that make sense? If the behaviors of that organization, and you're going to bring that, some of you are going to, I saw hands raised, you're going to start businesses, you need to understand this. So you can shape all of that stuff there, but it first begins and it ends with your internal environment. Your greatest successes, your ROIs, optimizing. We say optimize assets. People are your number one asset. You need to have this settled with yourself. I did not have that settled. I didn't know it at the time. I came up with excuses. It wasn't because I didn't have the talent. It wasn't because I didn't have the skill set. I'm in the Hall of Fame of my school. I had those accolades, all those things, but I was basing it on outcome. And I didn't settle the identity thing. And over the past 25 years of leading at every level and now running a company that's almost $1 billion, I see this all the time. All the time. If your identity isn't strong enough to hold you in the game, the strategy will not matter. And I just mentioned earlier about execution. How are you going to execute effectively if you don't have the internal environment settled? How are you going to lead people with clarity if you don't have that internally? How are you going to know what organization or team to be a part of if you haven't settled that internally? This is a deep question. Don't have the time in this. I'm going to offer you a resource at the end, but I don't sure have time. 50 minutes is not going to do it other than hopefully share with you how important the internal environment is. And the more you wrestle with that and understand that, the better you're going to show up. And then you put all these practices in place, and all of those practices in the external environment become optimized. I've seen this pattern over the last 20 years in leading at every level. I've seen it because I saw it in myself. Highly talented people, highly capable teams, high opportunities in environment. And they hesitate, they disengage. Not because of the potential, the capacity, the talent, the skill, but because internally they didn't have that internal environment settled. And like I said, that's exactly what happened to me. And like I said, the real issue isn't ability, isn't talent, isn't skill. It's identity. It's who you are. Who you are. We tie, many times in the identity, we tie who we are to how we perform. See, that's what happened to me. I came in this room here in that setting, and I tied my performance to my identity. And when I wasn't the one dominating anymore, I wasn't the one doing that anymore, then I thought something was wrong. Something was wrong. I was tying my identity to how I perform. So, I want to share with you later on, so afterwards, still was driven, still whatever. That's just one of those pillar moments in my life. That hindsight, I didn't get it then. That's why I think it's so important that as you walk away from here, you may have that settled. You are ahead of the game. But if you haven't had that settled, you can get ahead of the game very quickly. But you have to lean into that. You have to know and be comfortable with who you are. So, I'll give you a defining moment for me in my journey. So I joined this time ConAgra Foods. I was moving up very quick. Still have hard work, discipline. There's no hack for discipline, Jared, right? So I outworked everybody. I have that I like that. I love to do hard work. So I outworked everybody, became a student in the workplace, and I was moving very quickly up the operational ladder in ConAgra Foods. And I was excelling pretty quickly. I was traveling, implementing these operational excellence systems across multiple divisions. It was incredible, right? And I was having the time of my life. I had this really aggressive goal. I want to be making this much money at this age with this title. Outcome driven. Now, is it wrong to have those kind of goals? Absolutely not. But my identity was tied to that. I meet my now wife while I took a job in Colorado, and so I'm progressing up through my career. And so, long story short on this, I get this great promotional opportunity. There is no conversation about, hey, is this a good idea or not? Maybe we should pray about this. Should I do that? I was like, pack the bags up. We're moving to North Carolina because this is a great job. Moved to North Carolina. I'm in my mid-20s. Buy this great custom-built house on a golf course. Man, I think I've got it going on. I'm ahead of the game in my little path that I think I have set forth. Okay, and so I'm working now. I'm like, it's a plant turnaround. This plant's losing $1 million a month. They've had 21 salary turnover positions in a year. I failed to ask that question on the interview, right? The culture was horrible, right? It was a union environment. It was very tough. They looked at me like there was literally a moment in there, I'm no exaggeration. I remember to this day, I was walking out of that plant thinking, I'm going to get shot. It was a mess. I'm working 17-hour days, 6-7 days a week. It was awful, awful. And I was doing this for about almost a year till my wake-up moment. Again, I couldn't quite pin at the time. Lots of pillar moments like has been shared, but this is a defining one for me. I walk in on the external, looks like we have it all together. All my friends, oh man, you're doing great. I have one friend that's like, oh, you're going to be this, like this. I mean, you're just getting stroking the ego, right? And I come home one evening and I sit down in my what am I doing? This is miserable. And then it hits me, I don't know how many minutes later, but I'm like, where's Amanda? Where's she at? And I walk in the master bathroom and her head's between her knees. And she's just bawling and she's checked out. She is done. Because I failed to recognize that in my own selfishness. Because my identity was tied into my outcomes and how I was performing in my career. And it is by the grace of God. It is by the grace of God. Because in that moment, when I look back, I don't know how in my selfishness that I didn't look at it and be like, how dare you? Do you see what I'm trying to provide here? Do you see what I'm trying to do and how I'm trying to provide and do this? I didn't. The scales were removed from my eyes. And I literally, the next day, I was driving to work. This is so cheesy. You remember that Carrie Underwood song, Jesus Take the Wheel? It was almost like I did that. I wasn't even thinking about that at the time, but I literally was just like, God, you have to take this battle from me because I'm about to lose the only thing that really matters to me at that moment. I did not have my kids yet. I want you to hear this. These two and my other two that I shared, I did not have them yet. That's what I about lost. I drove and I said, God, take this battle from me. I cannot do it in my own strength. 30 days from that prayer, I was contacted out of the blue to join Purdue Farms. 30 days. Can't make this stuff up. I joined Purdue. Further than that, this is where I began to kind of settle the whole identity piece. It just so happens, I call them coincidences, that I got placed around a bunch of young couples, my wife and I did, that I got to see this is what it's supposed to look like. These were people who are grounded in their character, grounded in who they are. And I got to see that. So I got delivered, put into an incredible company. So that was a crazy blessing. It's crazy how I didn't even have a setback there. I didn't even have to take a step back in that journey. He delivers me into that place. I get around a bunch of young couples that I'm looking at and I'm just going, this is what it looks like. These people know who they are. They're not tied into the performance-driven outcomes. They know who they are. I was liberated in that moment. I wish I knew that a long time ago. It would have settled so many unnecessary pains. I'm thankful that I do now. But I wish I knew that when I was sitting where you're at right now. It would have changed so much. I am thankful for that grace because I was a thread from losing my wife I would not have the 4 amazing kids that I have today. So those opportunities in front of you, and again, I think that is why it's wildly important that you get that and that you settle that now, or that you begin wrestling with it. You're not something to prove. You are someone to steward. I think you should write that down. You're not someone or something to prove. You are someone to steward. That's the greatest privilege I have as a president of a company with almost 700 employees. It's stewarding a business for generations. It's stewarding the number one asset, which is people. It's stewardship. How can you steward an organization if you can't steward your own internal environment? You have to steward that. Identity is received. It's not earned. That's also good news. You don't earn your identity. You receive it. You have an identity. And when you understand that and you have that paradigm shift, everything changes. Everything. You're in a great conversation right now. It's been happening since time immemorial. It's the quarrel between the philosopher and the poet. They've debated this back in church history. Is there a God, not a God? All the questions that we wrestle with, you're engaged in this quarrel right now. And it all centers around identity. Last week, I was at a executive roundtable in Chicago, and I was sitting around the table with some incredible leaders. University of Chicago Medicine CEO, Ingalls Hospital CEO, CEOs and founders of multi-billion-dollar industries, and we were talking about 3 subjects. This is what the roundtable was about: talent, strategy, portfolio development, and AI and technology. These were the 3 main topics that got this roundtable together, because it's the 3 main topics that these organizations are wrestling with today. Talent, strategic portfolio development, and knowing when do you pivot, when do you not, how do you create it, how do you don't, and AI and technology. You know what I found fascinating, especially leading up to this today, is that in every one of those conversations, it all came back and circled around people. Further, you can't make this stuff up. It went to the depth of identity. Everybody's talking about their talent, their engagement plans. What do they have? What do they do? How do they engage their employees? And it just went so deep to the fact of identity. You can't make this up. I knew in my heart, the way it shaped my own life, that I knew that that's what I wanted to share here because it was so personal to me. And then I'm in a room with people leading far greater successful businesses, more people, and revenues and all that than mine, that I get the privilege to serve. People that are much older and wiser than me that I just got to sit at the table and learn from, and they all brought it back to identity. I've watched executives miss this greatly. I was in a company that was going to transact. It was under private equity. And all these models, I think it was said before, I think so in this, is like, it's not necessarily what's wrong or different. Personally, after being in publicly traded, privately held, multi-billion, large, small, medium-sized startup, etc., I personally prefer to find a family-owned business, right? It's just much easier to keep to the values that you would maybe hold to. But there's a need for them all. But I got to tell you something, and I think it was said here too. There was a defining moment when I went into vocational ministry that helped shape this as well, and I think you should hear it. When I went into vocational ministry, that was a wild journey. You kind of sell everything, you go into this space. It was a training ground for me that I didn't even realize at the moment. It stirred in me the mission of going back into the mission field of executive leadership to create cultures and to get to identity, because we spend so much time in the workplace. But I got the opportunity to conduct my first funeral. I was pretty nervous. It's like, oh my gosh, you don't want to mess that up, right? It's like, that was like a nervous laugh, right? It's like, that would not go well if you don't do a funeral well. It was my first one. I was pretty nervous. Funeral went well. It was a man who lived for 95 years and just had a well-lived life. So that was a good thing, right? But afterwards, the defining moment that I'll never forget, something that I've taken with me to this day, and I'm going to share it because it was alluded to even earlier, is I'm standing in the kitchen. I was invited to the house afterwards. I'm standing in the kitchen, and in the kitchen, I'm having a conversation with the son of the man who passed. He's a highly successful man. He built a commercial construction business and done very, very well, like very well. On again, the external environment, it's like, that's what I want to do. I want to be like that. Well, I want that. That must be success. As we're standing in the kitchen and we're having this conversation about our life journeys, this man began to just stare at me, and then, not awkwardly, but just kind of like something was stirring inside. And he said, Phil, he says, you know what I'd do if I had all the money in the world? It's like, what's that? He said, I'd buy back all the time I lost with my son. He had an 18-year-old son that was going off to college. And he realized at the expense of that, building this company, building this success, this empire, if you will, that he did that at the expense of being a father, of being the CEO of his home. Now, in that moment, just like in any of our moments there, I said, hey, it's not too late. Your 18-year-old son's going to need you now more than ever, right? So you can engage. But the principle I took from that is around being grounded in the priorities. That was a principle I took, and it stayed with me at that point in time. So, several years ago, I completed an Ironman. Sounds like a little pivot here, but it was incredible for me doing that. Always had that as a goal. I wanted to, it's this grueling, the training. I love that kind of grind. And as I was doing that Ironman, the one thing that was cool is like, you do that because you want to run down that red carpet, and as you run down that red carpet, you want to hear the words, you are an Ironman. Like, it's cool. It's electric. Anybody ever done anything like that, triathlon or Ironman? Okay, well, you should. Okay, so, and all kinds of people do it. It's incredible. It's so electric. There's so many life lessons in that as well, but I won't go in that. But here's what I realized in that. I'd already settled the identity component for me. So it actually made that experience even more liberating. Because life is an Ironman. Your journey is just like an endurance race. That's what it's going to be. It's filled with exhilarating moments. It's going to be filled with trials and speed bumps and setbacks. All those things are going to happen. I went into that Ironman. I didn't have to go prove anything, because the experience to me, I was already correlating that to life, to the journey and leadership, and to all the things that I've done and I'm going to do. And for you, it's the same thing. You are being invited into that race. And for me, it would have been much different if I didn't have the identity piece settled. If that wasn't settled, that experience would not have been what it was. Because as I did that and I see the crowd, I see that. Matter of fact, I'll tell you this really quick. I did all this training, I did all this stuff, and I get into the water. It's the one thing I didn't really know how to do. I knew how to swim back to the boat, but I didn't know how to swim efficiently. And so, that's a humbling moment. I got that figured out. So then I get there and it's the hype of the day. I get into the water, I start swimming, and I get like 100 meters in. I'm in a river. I can't even see in front of my head. I don't know if there's bodies floating underneath me. I mean, I'm in a place, I have no idea. It's a Tennessee River. And I'm swimming. I get like 100 meters, and I like panic. I'm like, I came out of the gates too fast. I was that competitive nature. I just came barreling out of the gates, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I had to stop. I had to grab a hold of this kayak of a spotter there. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I didn't even get 100 meters in, and I'm not going to be able to finish this thing? Man, I think a guy was an angel. I wanted to find him afterwards, just too many people. But he literally, I grabbed that. I'm having all these thoughts coming to my head. And I'm like, man, this can't be how this thing's going to go. And he looked at me and he goes, you good? I said, I'm good. He goes, you trained for this? You're good. I mean, he was just like, talking about coaching up right there, man. He was just like, you're good. I'm like, yes, sir. And I just took off, and I had I beat my swim time by like 20. We'll leave out the part that I was swimming with a current, but I beat that time by like 20 minutes. It was incredible, right? My whole purpose of this is like, you're going to need people. You can't do it alone. You got to have your identity settled, which I did before the race, right? People along the way, you're going to be encouraged. You're going to be an encourager, and people are going to encourage you. That's part of that journey. You're in an endurance race. Here's what I learned through that to get to the meat of this. Through all of that experience and that analogy, and we've shared that through our journeys, right? I realized this: life requires grit, but not the way you think of it, and not the way I did either. Most people think of grit. When you think of that word grit, what do you think of? Just blurt it out for time's sake. What's that? Sacrifice. Oh, that's a good word. Toughness. What else? Resistance? Investment. Ooh, these are good. Resilience. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Angela Duckworth, she did a great talk on this and wrote a book called Grit. And in that work, he talks about passion and perseverance over long term, right? For long-term goals, right? That's true. 100% true. And all these ways that you described are also true. And it's not just pushing harder, right? When I wrestled here, I had an identity issue that I didn't have settled yet. But I've watched people try really hard and go really hard, but they had an identity issue as well. They put their identity in the outcome, and when they didn't get what they wanted, or they put their identity in that sport and then that sport goes away, I'm not going to share names, but I know people and teammates whose life fell apart afterwards because they put their identity in the wrong thing. They didn't enjoy the journey. It's not about pushing harder. Here's the thing. The Department of Education came out with a study, and they said if there's 3 things, this is the Department of Education, if there's 3 things that 21st century students should learn above everything else, it was grit, tenacity, and perseverance. Grit, tenacity, and perseverance. I was on the school board at that time, and I remember thinking, that's not the phone calls I'm getting. And the phone calls I'm getting are pretty lame, actually. I'm like, where's the curriculum for this then? Why are we not teaching this? The good news as well is that grit, it's an intrapersonal character trait, right? It can be built like a muscle. That's good news. You realize also the statistics show that it actually is a greater predictor of success than even IQ. What have you heard up here? Common theme, resilience, bouncing back. The comeback's better than the setback. All these are true. It takes grit. I want to introduce you a quick framework. I want you to think about grit using the word GRIT, grinding through resistance to an irresistible target. That irresistible target is also based off of your identity. Because when it's based off your identity, that target will become irresistible. You will lean in. You will naturally become more resilient, right? Studies also show that grit has positive correlation with what's called authentic stable happiness. In psychology, you have authentic stable happiness and fluctuating happiness. Fluctuating happiness is where you're chasing those dopamine highs, right? Authentic stable happiness, I will go deeper. I'll say that's joy. You go through trials, no one says, I'm really happy. I'm authentically happy right now. Nobody says that, right? But you can find joy in that journey. Because here's the deal. Joy, fulfillment, meaning, and purpose, that is found and discovered in the journey of building grit, not the destination. You have to learn to enjoy the journey. You are invited on a race. Here's what we did. We came up with assessment. My co-founder and I, we got introduced together on a project, and we said, hey, we see this problem. She's a professor of psychology for Adams State University, and we set out to help solve it, to build the curriculum. And so what we did is we developed an assessment. We developed an assessment that since that time I've given to high-level athletes. I've worked with coaches who coach Olympians through some of the top programs in the country in sports. I've done it in organizations because all of these are cultures made up of people, right? And I did this assessment. What I learned in this assessment was that there are 8 top mental barriers. If you go to 365grit.com, you can see this up there, okay? But here's what we discovered. There's 8 main mental barriers of success, no matter whether you're an athlete or an entrepreneur or a leader or a stay-at-home mom, or it doesn't matter. We're all humans. We all have these barriers. These are the top 8. Okay, you can see them up there. Misplaced identity, fear of failure, procrastination, imposter syndrome, perfectionism, negative self-talk, fixed mindset, locus of control, meaning you're focused on the things that you can't control versus what you can control. These were the top 8 mental barriers. What's fascinating is that in all of the studies that we did and the assessments that I've given, there are 2 that always show up in the top 3. Misplaced identity and fear of failure. Further, in my studies and as I engage and coach and mentor teams and people, I've understood the same thing that happened to me 25 years ago. Most of this, all of these can be linked to misplaced identity. You can have these other symptoms, they're out there, but most of the time, those other symptoms, these other barriers can be linked to the individual not knowing their identity. How can you show up as the number one asset and add value if you have not settled that? You can't. You can't. You will not optimize. Further, here's what we did so I can land this plane for us all. We then set out to build a framework because you can build grit like a muscle. And so we gave this framework that I've led teams through strategically, and then you can take this and it can become a habit because that's what we want. For anything to be a habit, it has to be first practiced as a discipline. So we wanted to create an intentional framework that you could wrestle with. It may take a long period of time to do it, and then right away, my boys use it. Other people that I've coached can do this right before a match, right before whatever it may be. The first step is reflect. This is all about identity. You're going to hit the reflect stage. And through what we do is we'll do workshops or we'll do engagements and we'll help you through a systematic process on how to help you discover your identity. From that identity, how to shape the values, those fundamental truths that guide your thoughts and behaviors. Most of the time people it's much longer, it's the most important step. Once you've done that step, you move on to the next one, which is reset. When you go to the reset stage, right? You're now realigning who you are. You're resetting. You're figuring out what is my irresistible target now because I've now defined my identity and my values, how I'm going to operate and show up in life. Then I can go to reset and I can figure out from there, what do I need to say no to? What do I need to say yes to? All of those things. You're going to recognize the barriers. What are those barriers, those mental barriers that I just showed? Then you're going to go through those. You've got to identify those. We all have them. And at different stages in our life or situations, different variables or some of those barriers can show up. You identify that, and then we help you in the refocus stage on how to create the actionable plans and how to overcome those. And once you do that, then you can re-engage the last step with deliberate intentional action. So in other words, if you don't have a framework or a process to operate within, then you can't just hit the reset button or the easy button. You say, well, I'm just going to try again. It doesn't work. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, right? Well, I can tell you this, you will get different results. You'll get worse results if you don't do that. If you don't have a way to navigate within that helps you in your internal environment, then you won't know what you're solving for. The reflex stage is the most important. You get honest with who you are. Over the years, over the last 20 years, this has been a fun work for me, and I want to offer something for you. This is through this journey, and this month, actually it's a matter of probably days, maybe weeks, I published a book called Grace-Fueled Grit. And it's basically taken all of these years in this journey and understanding, like I've understood, that you have an identity. You have a race. You have a race that you're being invited into. It's an endurance race. It's going to require grit. And that grit is actually fueled by grace. You can't do it alone. You weren't created to do it alone. You will need a team of people around you, and you'll need to settle who you are. There's 2 different mindsets. There's a scarcity mindset and an abundance mindset. The scarcity mindset preserves and protects. The abundance mindset understands you already have everything you need. That's the thing about identity. Identity is received, not earned. You all have it. I said at the beginning that I I started my journey to be a teacher and a coach. And I thought, I didn't. I got persuaded by Dr. Parisi to go into the American Humanics program, and so I shifted and did that. And then on and on and on. As I discovered my identity, I've always been a teacher and a coach. That is my identity. My identity for me is anchored in Christ. I've seen incredible pillar moments in my life that I cannot explain. I'm not talented enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, all those things. I'm not. I've seen pillar moments that fuel me to continue to run the race that's set before me. That's my encouragement to you. You have a race set before you. As has been shared, it will not look like what you think it may look like. It's going to look much different. That's a good thing. I want you to look around at each other as I finish out. Look at each other. Isn't that kind of awkward? Right? There's nobody like you. Nobody. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. It's incredible when you think about that. Nobody in all the years has been created like you. When you show up in your true identity, if you didn't get anything else from this, this is what I want you to hear. When you show up in your true identity, you're a gift to the world. This world is starving for grounded leaders. You have to settle the identity. It is received, not earned. And when you show up in your true identity, you're a gift to the world.
All right, we have a few minutes for questions, so start way in the back, if you would. Milena? Oh, you right here, okay.
First of all, very well said, and thank you for our conversation yesterday as well. I believe your testimony is very strong and inspiring as well. And I was just wondering if you could tell us young believers that really want to become a leader once, how you balance, how you worship God and the other things, because it's very easy for us to worship other things and focus on completely other things than God Himself.
Yeah.
I know it's a pretty hard question for you to answer because
No, it's not. I love it, actually.
it's a lot to tell,
Yeah.
but trying to shorten out, I know it's a lot of questions out there, so thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question and the boldness to ask that question. I think that's the one thing. At 48 years old, I've kind of had this desire, like I want to run harder. And so I think the one thing I didn't share here is this. You have this race right now. When I came across that finish line, to hear Phil Kassel, you are an Ironman. Man, it is electric. It's so good. You know what I long for more than that? When my time comes, I want to be exhausted when I cross the main finish line so that I hear, well done, good and faithful servant. That's what I long for. That's my irresistible target. That's what I want. And so for me, all of life has become worship. And for me, I don't have to go and it's really how I live. So it's how do I show up from that identity, right? Exuding the kind of values that I believe in. And so for me, there's not a balance for me in that. I show up that as a father, as a husband, as a leader, right? It's in all of life, because all of life is worship to me. You worship something. And so that framework that we developed, reflect, reset, refocus, reengage, that for me, that's what centers me back to that no matter what I'm doing. I reflect. Okay, I have to do that on a regular. That's why we created it to be like a habit. It's a strategic framework first. Once you have that settled, then I can do it instantaneously. It's a habit. Reflect, reset, refocus, reengage. Reflect, reset, refocus, reengage. And so I've taken strategic teams through that as we create operating plans and vision and strategy, and then I can do it personally in my own life. So for me, that's how I balance it. It's more rhythm. It's all of life for me. Does that help?
Yeah. Okay. Good. Next question. Oh, by the way, Israel, thanks for being here. He's got to leave, so he was one of our presenters yesterday. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Next question.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for wrapping up all the wonderful speakers. It was a great way to finish. I so appreciate also your message to the students about being the CEO of your family first. Thank you for that. And I can so relate to the identity. But I've gone through that probably at least two times in my life. Can you speak to that? Because, you know, I asked myself, how did I get into this mess? Like, how did I get there again? So about, you know, in my late 20s, I went through it. It always had to do with a career change, very similar to yours. What do you do when it happens again? I'm a little bit older than you, so maybe it hasn't hit you yet for the second time. But
so let me share this through a quick story, okay? And maybe this will help. So since that time, 25 years ago here, quitting the wrestling, like to me now, I look at them like, you know, my boys are like, I would have never saw that in you, right? Because of the growth that's happened since then. So there's been so many harder seasons in my life. I got to tell you one quick story in this. It's too powerful. Because I'm a performer, I'm an achiever, etc. I got on this. I was in a company. I was a chief operating officer, and I'll leave the company out. I'll leave all of that stuff out of there. I started out really close with the CEO. Thought we were pretty equally yoked. And but when that old private equity happens and you're going to transact, that'll kind of show you your values. You'll know where they are when they're tested. Your identity, right, linked to your values, you'll know where they are when they're tested. So what happened, long story short, is that CEO and I who started out close, once that started to happen and we were getting to transact, and it's all about the EBITDA number, which is such a false number anyways, but that's another story. And so that started to separate us. I started finding myself being put into compromising positions. I'm an achiever. I've got, you know, leadership awards, all this stuff. And now I'm in this like crisis here because everything about me is like, I cannot follow this. I can't be a part of this. It's putting me in some compromising positions. Here's the cool thing for me, because where I found my identity at. That got me really close. I started just praying every day, like, God, you got to take this battle, you got to take this battle. I had my handwritten, like, my note or my resignation letter. I carried it with me for 6 months. My wife every day would say, like, did you give it to him yet? I'm like, no, I didn't feel like I was supposed to yet. But it was grueling. Here's the cool thing for me. I felt like I was supposed to start journaling. I was journaling every day. I started journaling my prayers, started journaling just because I knew, I felt like that was what the Lord was telling me to do. Then I knew, like, okay, something's going to happen. November 9th. That morning, I felt like I was supposed to pray very specifically. So I did. I was being pursued by another company, so I thought my prayer was going to be a little different. But I felt like I was being challenged to pray specifically. So I prayed, Lord, I was thinking for my family, thinking for all this stuff, and I said, I pray that you would take this battle from me and deliver me today. I got fired that day. Can't make it up. I had so much peace. And since then, what that did, that led us on a journey. That journey landed me to where I'm at now. I would have not found that to where I'm at now. It's incredible. That was an identity issue that I had to separate from. And in my flesh, I wanted to do it because I'm like, you're not going to do that. I'm going to end on my terms. And I surrendered that. And so it was very difficult because as a performer, I was like, almost like, well, that was my identity in that. That's what wants to wrestle the quarrel in there. Like, no. I can't make that up. I was challenged to pray very specifically that morning after a whole year of this struggle, right? That morning, that was the same day. So for me in those moments, that just tests me. And now, the comeback is always better than the setback that Gina started out with. Far better. I can't make it up. That's the grace that fuels grit for me. And I'm in an environment and a culture and get to lead a company that's far greater, far more successful, far more rooted and grounded in the same identity and values. I would not have found that had I not gone through that. I hope that helped. Okay.
Anybody else?
Hi.
Hi, Siri.
I wanted to go a little back and talk about the woke moment you talked about in your life, that you had the fear of you losing your life. And I wanted to ask, like, all of us, we all have what we feel like is the lowest moment in your life. What differentiated for you and compared to those other moments that you had in your life that you decided, okay, this is my moment, or, you know, this is my woke moment? How would you describe that?
Yeah, well, I should clarify. That might be my. I live in Minnesota now, but I'm from Missouri, and sometimes that Missouri accent comes out, and so But I didn't. If you thought I said into my life, that's not. I was about to lose my wife, and but I will tell you though. But to answer that question though, is that was a very low moment for me. That moment was excruciating, and it's even more so personal now because I was that close. So for me in the past, try to do it on my own. This point in time, I was like, I can't do it on my own. I think that's the freeing, and that's tough sometimes. Like for how I'm wired, is I am an achiever. I am like, let's go. Like I'll figure out how to tear down the walls, go through it, whatever. Like I am wired that way, but I've been constantly reminded in my life that I cannot totally do that on my own. I have a part to play in that for sure. Hard work, discipline, all those things are virtues that I need to do. But at the end of the day, right, it can't just be about, for me, I had to surrender that over. So for my journey, and then from that moment on, I've had those, we call those pillar moments in our life. And so when I go through a trials are hardwired. We're all going to go through them. You got more coming. I got more coming. You got more coming. Like we have that all in common, right? And so when I understand that trials are hardwired, and that's where growth happens, in my journey, because of these pillar moments, I actually now can look at that in anticipation. That's wild. That's where joy actually is. I mean, I don't want to, I'm like, hey, I really don't want to have to go through it, but I know that they're coming. And so when they do happen, I can look in anticipation because for me, I serve a God who's always faithful even when I'm not. And he's time and time again proved himself true in that. That's why I say, test him. He's true in that. And so that's helped me each time to give me that grace. That's why I say grace fuels grit. That grace that's received is what gives me the fuel to go forward.
All right, Phil, thank you. Any other questions? Guess that's it. Thank you very much, Phil.
Right.
Great way to wrap it up.
Thanks for letting me sit my stuff here.
All right, before we completely wrap up our 2-day program here, we do have some $20 gift certificates if you filled out that survey and you must be present, right? So let's start over the list. And if you're here, come on up. If not, we have some alternates as well. Hope I get your names right. Carlotta Davila. Okay, come on up. Lucia Escabaz. Am I right? Lucia Valdivia Escabaz. Nope. How about Michael Westman? He's here. Bernardo Rosé. Okay. Lola Benitez. Lola here. Angel Lopez. You should have stayed. There it is. Christopher R.A. Colton Myers. Colton. Thiago Fafero. And let's see, Camden Phillips. Okay. How many we have left, Reagan? 4? Okay, Ricky Schott. Carla Moros. Brittany Slocum. And looks like, is it Luca Mitchell? Is that it? Okay. Is that Luca? Okay. All right. So congratulations. Thanks for filling that out. So Milena, would you like to come up? It's been a great 2 days. And as we wrap things up, of course, give her another hand for really leading this entire process. Milena Simic, come on. Come on.
Thank you. I don't know what to say after such closing and the tremendous 2 days and our wonderful speakers that we had. I really do have the deepest gratitude for you all for being here and part of this inspiring gathering. And If this looks like it's easy to put together, it's probably because it's a well-oiled machine with a large team behind and everyone pitching in a lot of hard work, time, and effort. So as Ken mentioned before, today and yesterday, there's a list at the back of the program that is really where all the credit goes. To our supporters from Dr. Parisi and the administration, our amazing sponsors, the Wood and Houston Bank and underwriters of the event, to multiple offices around the campus with Advancement in Alumni Relations, Dan Gregg. If you're here, please stand up. Dallas Hopping, Director of Institutional Advancement. Ken, the master, the voice of Missouri Valley College, without whom this would not be nearly as wonderful. Scott Queen, Executive Director of Marketing and Communications. Cameron Gotzi, taking pictures in the back. Marketing and Communications Specialist. Chaz Maddie, the master of our broadcast. And Chaz, how many viewers have we had? If you can tell us. Yesterday we had 62. 60 today. That's wonderful. That's 60 people who are around the world. We don't know exactly, but we sent out links to our alums, to friends, to former speakers, Board of Trustees members to be with us here virtually today, and I hope they're having a great time. In addition, Professor Fedorovich and her group of wonderful student volunteers who are doing the check-in. Reagan Gotzi, Director of Alumni and Community Engagement, our IT services, our faculty, wonderful professors of School of Business and Technology, and student volunteers, and our crew, Fresh Ideas, MVC Maintenance. This is a whole campus project. This is not a one-person show or, a couple of people, but there's lots of hands in making this a success. So what started 20 years ago is now a tradition, and it's a legacy for the next generations of students who will walk these grounds as proud Vikings as you are. And students, some of you, before you were born, MIE, Maastricht Institute of Entrepreneurship, welcomed the first group of speakers in Ferguson Center in room 224, not nearly as wonderful space as we have today. The Institute co-founders, Dr. Bonnie Humphrey, Dr. Ed Elliott, and Dr. Benoit Wesley are all joining me in sending their greetings and wishes for more successful years. And late Professor Stockman, they probably couldn't even imagine how successful this institute will be, and let alone that it will be thriving 20 years from then. And I have a list of names here that were first speakers, literally our first MIE speakers, but they won't mean anything to you. But what should mean something to you is that they've paved this way for the next 20 years. And as of conclusion of the Maastricht Institute today, there will be 160 accomplished business professionals, entrepreneurs, innovators, inventors, change makers, community leaders who can say that they were alums of the MIE Institute. And out of those, which is what we're most proud of, 40 and more earned their bachelor's degrees at Missouri Valley College and had classes in the same Beatty classrooms as you. That 119, the awkward pole in the middle of the room, they were there. So if we could time travel, like Mr. Natividad, he left before I could say this to him. He'd probably find it funny, I hope. It would be fun to travel back to their student days and tell them, hey, one day you will come back to MVC and you will meet the new generations of students who will be moved by your words to pursue their dreams and make a difference in the world. So perhaps one day you will return to, and we would love nothing more than to see you up here sharing your success story with a new generation of MVC students. I'd like to give credit to all of our speakers for my closing. I want you to go out there and get to know your peeps. Work hard and smart, and there is no hack for discipline. Lean into hard things. Adapt to the speed bumps and changing technology. and build a life that works for you, stay grounded, build relationships, not just resumes, and see the silver lining. And why? Can you guess the answer? Because you can. So see you next year for the 19th Maastricht Institute of Entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you very much. As we wrap things up, I just, again, would like to say we all learned so much in the last 2 days. I'm sure your students really appreciate that. So if you could, just one more time, Simon and Sean, please stand up. Thank you very much for being here today. Darcy? Phil? Gina? And Jared? Thank you. It's time for lunch. They'll all be here. You know, in most years, all the presenters don't stay for every day, and we really appreciate that. So all the networking you can do, enjoy it, and pick the brains of these people here. You have an opportunity this afternoon. Thanks for being here. Enjoy lunch, and thank all of you for being here.